Your safety is important to Plenco, and understanding hazards and requirements is an important part of your job here as a contractor. This training will cover an introduction to a variety of key safety topics. In addition, prior to starting your job, you will receive additional specific information about the area you will be working in. You will also receive a booklet containing this information and be required to sign a statement that you have been trained prior to beginning work. Plastics Engineering Company is covered by the Process Safety Management or PSM OSHA standard. So what is process safety management? The rules created in 1992 to increase safety at facilities containing certain hazardous chemicals or large quantities of flammable liquids. At Plenco, we fall under this regulation due to the quantity of formaldehyde on site as well as flammable liquids. Our PSM covered areas are formaldehyde unloading and storage, resin cooking, and phenol recovery. Process safety management has 14 required components, plus an overview requirement. We will briefly cover each of these. Employee participation is a critical component to the PSM program. Employees must be involved in their own safety, not just passive participants. There are many ways that employees participate in safety at Plenco, and we also expect you to participate by following safety guidelines and training, as well as following safe work practices. The next section looks at something called Process Safety Information, abbreviated PSI. PSI is broadly broken into three areas: chemical, technology, and equipment. Chemical is pretty much just like it sounds. It deals with the health hazard information of covered chemicals. In our case, this is primarily provided through SDSs available from kiosks and from your project contact. Additional information is also available from the EHS department. The technology section deals with process chemistry, process flow, maximum inventories, and safe operating limits. Much of this information is also included in specific operator instructions for making resin. The equipment section deals with characteristics of process equipment. This includes materials of construction, process diagrams, electrical information, relief and safety systems, as well as design codes and equipment lists. Taken together, it provides detailed information on the safety systems and performance characteristics of the process. It enables staff to make good decisions about the process and possible dangers and how to avoid them. Process hazard analysis is a tool used to critically examine a process and make possible improvements to safety or process performance. The analysis is conducted using a team of specialists, including operators that evaluate the likelihood and severity of possible system failures. These evaluations must be revisited every 5 years or when there is a significant change to the process. In this way, they remain current with small changes that may occur. Recommendations generated through this process are evaluated and tracked to a final resolution. Not every recommendation will result in action, but they are all examined. Operating procedures cover specific instructions generated to safely operate covered processes. They can be very specific, like the instructions for making a specific resin, or more general in nature, like hose inspection procedures. Each of these must be reviewed annually to determine if changes or updates are necessary. In this way, they remain relevant to the process. Training is a critical component of the PSM program. Initial training is required on a broad range of topics. As a contractor, your employer has to indicate that they are complying with OSHA training requirements across a range of topics, including lockout, confined space entry, and hot work. If there are specific hazards you will encounter as part of your job at Plenco, you will receive additional training both in this course and on site. It is important that if you have questions about training materials that you ask. Communication has to occur in both directions. For online courses, you should come to EHS with any questions or concerns after training. PSM isn't just about Plenco employees, it also covers contractors doing work in PSM covered areas. We want to ensure that we are bringing in contractors that are safe and responsible, so they must send us information on their safety programs and performance before being hired. This includes information on their accident rates. We need to inform them of hazards they may encounter while working here. We do this through the use of contractor orientation packets as well as this training. Additionally, we provide contractors with feedback on their on-site job performance. Pre-startup safety reviews help us to safely start a new process or restart processes that have been modified. The process of going through the checklist generates follow-up items to be completed prior to or immediately following startup. The intention is to use the group to discover items that may have been overlooked during project completion. Items generated through the PSSR process are tracked to completion and documentation is retained. Mechanical integrity program focuses on making sure equipment is properly designed and maintained and that employees are properly trained in the process hazards and procedures. You may note that there is some overlap in these sections. This is intentional and intended to make sure that some important aspects of safety are not overlooked. This section also covers how we complete and record work orders, preventative maintenance, and record keeping. In some cases, it even covers what we keep available for spare parts. As a whole, the program ensures that equipment is well maintained, inspected regularly, and that a record of what was done is maintained. While hot work is its own OSHA program, it is also specifically called out in PSM. Because of the potential danger from ignition sources, a complete hot work program is an important component of our overall safety program, specifically in complying with the PSM standard. In addition to following the minimum guidelines for hot work established by OSHA, Plenco follows the more exhaustive procedures set forth by FM Global, our property insurer. This measure helps to ensure the safety of both the facility and the personnel working here. Individuals with responsibility under the hot work program must receive training on their responsibilities and how to safely complete them. Management of change, often referred to as MOC, is a process used to evaluate changes made to covered processes and the possible hazards those changes may pose. Even small changes in material types can have significant consequences. This process gets all of the involved parties in one room to discuss what the possible outcomes of the change might be, as well as identifying actions that may need to be completed prior to the change and immediately following. Depending on the complexity of the change, it could also trigger a process hazard analysis or pre-startup safety review. In less complex instances, it may only trigger modifications to operating instructions or process documentation. The outcomes from a change can impact many areas we have discussed, so it is important that all aspects are identified and followed through on. Incidents at chemical plants can have serious ramifications. When an incident occurs, it is important that the cause is fully understood and corrective actions are taken to prevent reoccurrence. The PSM standard has specific requirements for incidents that occur at chemical facilities in terms of how fast they are completed and when they begin. We have additional requirements we will discuss later in this program that relate to contractors that have incidents and how your investigation program needs to overlap with ours. Emergency planning and response is at the heart of the PSM program. It ensures that we prepare for both simple emergencies and complex situations that may arise. At Plenco, we have an integrated contingency plan that outlines our response to common safety and environmental emergencies. We also have special directions for shutting down critical processes in the event of an emergency to keep everyone safe. The type of training you will receive depends on a person's responsibilities. For most people, the primary responsibility in an emergency will be to evacuate the facility or seek shelter in a designated storm shelter. If you are directed to evacuate, it is important that you do so immediately and proceed to the guard shack where you will be accounted for. Compliance audits act as a quality check on the functioning of the PSM program. We have an annual list of items that we need to complete, which acts as an annual internal audit. We also conduct audits from outside the program for a 3-year basis that acts as a more thorough investigation of the program and makes sure that all required components are in place. The final section deals with trade secrets. The program recognizes that some information may need to remain proprietary. When proprietary information is involved, it may be protected through non-disclosure agreements and document control. All workers at Plenco are required to wear safety glasses with side shields as well as safety shoes at a minimum. Most jobs will require additional PPE. Your project contact will make you aware of the hazards and may share with you kinds of PPE we use, but contractors are required to furnish their own PPE and safety equipment. Plenco has a security fence around the perimeter of the property. Contractors are only permitted to enter and exit through the manned security gate, Gate 1, located on North Ave. Each contract employee must check in with the security guard and personally sign in and out of the visitor log. While on site, contractors are restricted to their designated job areas. This is for your safety. Smoking is only allowed in designated areas. Your contact person will make you aware of where these are. The use of vending machines and restroom facilities is permitted unless you are specifically directed otherwise. Your contact person will advise you of what facilities to use and where they are. If facilities will not be available, the contact person will make you aware of that in advance so other arrangements can be made. Parking locations for contractor vehicles will be indicated by the security officer or your point of contact at the facility. Please adhere to the instructions you are provided as they are for your own safety. In the event a contractor has an accident or incident, it must be reported immediately. Basic medical attention, first aid, is available from Plenco medical responders. If additional treatment is needed, outside assistance will be called. To get basic medical attention, ask your project manager or a Plenco employee to help provide assistance. We are required to maintain a log of contractor accidents as part of the PSM program. Contractors are expected to complete an accident report if an employee is injured and to provide a copy of the report to Plenco for review. Plenco may also conduct its own investigation if necessary. If you need to summon emergency services, you can dial 911 or simply 911 from any company phone and it will go through. Be sure to provide responders with information about your location, such as the building number. Again, Plenco employees can provide assistance if necessary in directing first responders to your location. There are many flammable or combustible materials at Plenco, and as a result, fire protection systems are important. We have automatic sprinkler systems located throughout the plant. These are heat activated, and activation will automatically notify the Sheboygan Fire Department. We also have pull station alarms that can be activated manually. Activating a pull station also results in notification of the Sheboygan Fire Department. Pull stations are located near all stairwells and exits. In the event of an evacuation emergency, you should quickly leave the building and assemble near the guard shack where you signed in. In this way, you will be accounted for. If you do not assemble there, you will be designated as missing, and this will be communicated to the fire department. In the event of a shelter emergency, you should proceed to one of the marked shelter locations until the threat has passed. Alarm sounds are indicated in the table, and your contact will make sure you're aware of what they are during your on-site orientation. I will also play at this time the sound of the alarms for you. This is the fire alarm. And this is the take shelter alarm. In either situation, you'll receive additional information from your contact on when it is safe to return to work. Fire extinguishers are located throughout the facilities, and where special types of fire extinguishers are required, they have been deployed. These would include CO2 and water fire extinguishers, in addition to the ABC fire extinguishers. One consideration here is that the extinguishing agent in ABC fire extinguishers are a contaminant for our product, and the dust can be difficult to distinguish from our material. If you do discharge an ABC fire extinguisher on company grounds, it is very important that you notify your contact immediately. There are specific internal measures that must be taken to prevent the spread of the contamination to the extent possible. One thing you can do to help is to limit the area exposed as much as possible and prevent people and vehicles from entering and exiting the area until a cleanup crew arrives. Like any company that has flammable or combustible materials, good housekeeping is important. Keeping your work area clean and free of dust will aid our efforts. Keep flammable liquids in approved containers and never use them around sparks or flame. Dispose of scraps, rags, and other contaminated materials in approved containers. Observe the smoking restrictions. Smoking is allowed only in designated locations. Keep aisles, doors, and fire equipment clear at all times. Cell phones are not allowed in electrically hazard rated areas. This information will be provided to you by your Plenco point of contact. The location of fire doors and separation between buildings is part of our fire control system. All stairwell doors are considered fire doors and must remain closed when not in use. Plenco's Hot Work program follows the FM Global program, and we use permits provided by them. If you need a Hot Work permit, it will be initiated by your Plenco contact. Contractors are expected to provide their own fire watch and also expected to provide their own extinguishers. Whenever possible, water fire extinguishers should be used to mitigate the contamination threat of ABC fire extinguishers. All contractors performing hot work must be trained in the Hot Work program requirements. Plenco may request verification of training before work begins. A permit must be issued prior to entry of any permit-required confined spaces. Prior to entry, contractor employees must be trained in confined space entry. Plenco will identify the spaces, provide information on known hazards associated with the space, and aid in establishing the initial permit. The contractor will coordinate with the contact to complete the permit, ensure all conditions have been met for safe entry, provide all necessary equipment to safely enter and monitor the space, and return the completed permit when they are finished. Contractor employees must provide their own rescue services and equipment. Line breaks, when necessary, will only be performed by Plenco personnel. There are many lines at Plenco that contain hazardous materials, and it is for this reason that only Plenco personnel will open them. If a line needs to be opened as part of a job, the contractor should work with his Plenco point of contact to have a permit issued and the line opened. Contractors need to coordinate their lockout-tagout program with the Plenco program. The Plenco program has an additional requirement that a supervision lock must accompany the contractor lock to ensure equipment is properly locked out and operations is aware of what is occurring. The Plenco point of contact will fulfill his role by putting his lock on the group lockbox. It is also the responsibility of the point of contact to ensure that any necessary stop tags are issued and documentation is created for operations on what has been done. Contractors are responsible for providing their own locks. Contract employees must be trained in lockout and authorized by their employer. Plenco will make our lockout procedure available and will apply locks to de-energize equipment as part of the supervision lock process. Contractors should not disengage any power source without prior approval and the participation of Plenco supervision. Contractors must make their point of contact aware of any materials or chemicals that they are bringing on site and have SDSs available for them. As part of Plenco's hazard communication program, contractors must be made aware of the chemical hazards present in materials here as well. SDSs are available from your Plenco contact or from any employee if needed. SDSs are maintained electronically and are available from any computer and from designated kiosks throughout the plant. If you need one, just ask and it can be immediately provided. All containers with material in them must be labeled in compliance with the Hazard Communication Standard. If you are bringing materials in, make sure it has a legible primary container label, and if it is a secondary container, that it contains the name of the material, hazardous components, and any applicable hazard warnings. Plenco uses a lot of different chemicals in its operation. However, contact with hazardous materials is not typical. Even so, the hazardous nature of these materials requires that you know how to protect yourself if you were to come into contact. The chemicals of greatest concern are in the resin department, as well as the storage tanks out in the tank farm. Consequently, you will find many safety showers located throughout the plant as well as outside. If you come into contact with a chemical or unknown liquid, it is important that you quickly use the safety shower to flush the chemical from your body. Contaminated clothing must be removed. If this is necessary, there are Tyvek suits in the kits located adjacent to each shower, along with materials to help decontaminate yourself. There is also a container marked phenol soap. This will help to remove phenol from your skin more rapidly than water alone. If you are contaminated after showering, you will also need to seek medical attention. Our first responders can assist with the proper measures to take. We have a number of different acids here, some wet, others dry. If you get a dry acid on yourself, brush as much powder off as you can before wet washing. We also have wet and dry bases. As with the acids, brush any dry material off prior to washing. In either case, wash the contaminated area thoroughly with soap and water. If it is on your clothing, you will need to remove it and the skin underneath washed and rinsed. Formaldehyde is one of our primary chemicals of concern. It is perceptible at very low levels, but this should not be used as an indicator for compliance purposes. In most instances, formaldehyde levels at Plenco are very low. However, in the event of a line break, higher levels could be encountered and respiratory protection should be used. Any release of formaldehyde should be reported to Peter Madden in the EHS department immediately. In the case of exposure, use a safety shower or eye wash as appropriate and flush for 15 minutes. Additional medical attention may be necessary. Phenol also has a distinct smell and is perceptible at very low levels. As with formaldehyde, phenol exposures are well below permissible exposure limits during normal operations. In the event of contact, it is very important to wash the affected area with phenol soap immediately. Wash the area for 15 minutes and have someone call for emergency assistance. Direct contact requires medical follow-up, but measures need to be taken not to contaminate responders or their vehicles. Plenco personnel will work with you on this. Aniline is in the phenol family and is potentially even more dangerous. The response for aniline exposure is the same as for phenol. It is extremely important that you begin washing the affected area immediately and that you then seek medical attention. Aniline binds to hemoglobin, kind of like carbon monoxide, and prevents the transport of oxygen to cells. There is an antidote and medical measures that can be taken, but the speed of the response is important. If you suspect you have gotten aniline on you, you need to alert someone to call for help and start washing right away with the phenol soap. Methanol is present in resin, phenol recovery, and the tank farm. Methanol is a highly flammable liquid and absorbs readily through skin. It is also an inhalation hazard. If you come into contact with it, wash the affected area thoroughly with soap and water. Butyl acetate is used only at phenol recovery. It is also highly flammable and an absorption and inhalation hazard. As with methanol, the affected area should be washed with soap and water. There are a large number of dry additives that we put into mixtures. If you will be encountering these, you will receive specific instructions on PPE requirements. Do not commingle these materials. Even though they are dry, some are capable of reacting with others. If you encounter materials you are unsure about, ask for additional information on safe handling. The primary chemicals of concern at BMC are styrene. You will notice the smell, but it is well under exposure limits. Acetone, you'll also notice the smell of this material, and it's very flammable. Be sure to take appropriate precautions around this material. There are also peroxides out there. The peroxides are stored in refrigerated areas and should not be encountered in the work you would be doing. If you would be working around them, you'll be provided additional information by your facility contact. Distillate is generated during the resin making process and sent to phenol recovery for separation. It may contain phenol and formaldehyde. In the event of exposure, immediately remove contaminated clothing and wash the affected areas with phenol soap. Your Plenco contact will provide further instructions. Finished liquid resin may also contain formaldehyde and phenol, although at much lower levels. They are unlikely to present a health hazard. However, you should immediately wash the exposed areas with soap and water. We have dusts here as both raw materials and as product. Many of these are combustible, and some are even flammable. It is important to avoid creating situations where there is a dust cloud suspended in air. If you encounter a situation where dust may create a hazard, contact your project coordinator before proceeding further. It is the expectation of Plenco that OSHA fall protection requirements be observed during jobs. You are expected to provide your own fall protection equipment and use it according to regulatory and manufacturer guidelines. If contractors are observed violating fall protection requirements, work may be halted until adequate provisions can be made. Contractors are generally expected to provide all of their own tools and equipment. This includes safety equipment, PPE, as well as lifts. In rare instances, Plenco may permit its equipment to be used in an unforeseen circumstance. If that is the case, the contractor will need to indicate that they have received training in the use of the equipment in accordance with OSHA requirements. This will be handled by the Plenco project manager. When you arrive, the project manager, your Plenco contact, will meet you and go over the specifics of the job. Additionally, on an annual basis, each contractor will be provided a hard copy of this training and will need to sign a form stipulating that they have received it. For each job, you'll receive specific information on a range of safety items as indicated. If you have questions, please reach out to your contact. If he doesn't know, he will get in contact with EHS to provide additional information. You have heard it a lot during this training. If you have questions, ask someone. This is not the kind of environment you want to do things on a best guess basis in. Your contact will do their best to answer your questions right away, but if necessary, additional personnel will be pulled in to provide the information you need to do the job safely. Thank you for your attention during this training. We hope to make your time at Plenco both safe and productive.